Hello and welcome to Think in the Circle. I'm going to focus on this one to my friends academics because there has been so much debate around artificial intelligence and how students are using it or how artificial intelligence might be using students. There's one thing we know for certain, that artificial intelligence is not going away. If anything, it's going to advance much, much faster than we ever dream to learn all the different possibilities. So trying to catch students using artificial intelligence is becoming a losing battle. So instead of asking how we can stop AI, perhaps we should be thinking this a little bit different. So I'm going to approach it this time for those who really are against AI and they want to minimize the use of AI by students. So the question here is, start from the end, start from the assessment and thinking, okay, I've designed my assessment to make sure that it measures my aims and objectives at module level. So let me think, how do I design assessments that will make AI shortcuts unnecessary, or in some cases inactive? There might be another video in the future for those who do like AI and how you can use AI as your friend, but this video is going to focus on how to minimize the utilization of AI by students. So I'm going to briefly discuss some ideas, 10 assessment design strategies that I believe would minimize inappropriate use of AI and really reward authentic thinking, the engagement of the student, and learning that you can ensure that is theirs. So my strategy number one is to think about the context-rich assessment, which is very, very much about the content that you have presented in the sessions. So avoid the generic assessment prompts because those are the easiest for artificial intelligence type of platforms to come up with answers. So how do you make sure that there are localized assessments and they assess things or topics or areas that you've already taught? Well, you can ground those assessments in specific course content. You can choose the case studies. So if you choose local case studies, or even better, the student-owned experiences, and you have prompts where you're asking them to be very, very specific, AI will become less useful than if you had generic prompts. So if students must reference their data or the context, then the work becomes far more humanized than if you leave it to generic case studies. The second strategy, I think, is all about the learning process itself. So it's about assessing not the end result, but the whole product. You know, the whole presence of the students, the way they interact with other students, not just a end coursework or an end exam. Although exam, many would argue, can beat AI. It just depends on the exam. But AI right now, as we see it, is really good at generating final answers, but it can't really demonstrate learning over time without somebody investing considerable time of teaching it specifically to their case, in which case they might as well write the assignment. So think about assessments that get graded for drafts and revisions, things like journals or learning logs or reflective diaries. These all work for this particular strategy. So when you think of assessing the students about how they arrive to the outcome rather than the outcome, then any AI shortcuts start losing value here for the student. Number three is live components, presentations, oral in class. And I know some colleagues are saying even the presentation is prepared by AI, but you can move away from presentations. You can design elevator pitch, for example. Small elements that together significantly reduce the misuse of AI. So instead of thinking of long viva-voce style of explanations, start thinking of series of mini lift elevator pitches, for example. Or think about in-class problem solving. Think about creating assessment where the students are the panel and they're answering questions you have planted in the classroom. Recorded walkthroughs of submitted work could work, and generally speaking, if a student really owns the work, they'll be able to explain it, and if you have ensured that explanation and the approach of the how is part of the assessment, then again you minimize AI. Number 4 is all about authentic assessment tasks. So think about the professional practice and mirror that, so that if you're very, very specific and try to make it specific to the area where you are based. So a policy brief by an association or a company in your own nation. If you're in the UK, we have 4 different nations. Often policies differ. Think about involving your lesson plans. Think about project proposals, or even provide them secondary data that you expect them to analyze. You can even provide them that secondary data just before the presentation. Give them a few minutes to prepare, and then they present. And you require to see their judgment, their critical thinking, and the kind of context and nuance that AI finds difficult to replicate. Number 5, a strategy would be to ask students to take a personal position on a particular problem. For example, you can look at the news of that particular morning and create a debate. And ask them questions like, what approach would you choose and why? What assumptions influence your decision? Which particular session from the past 10 sessions within this module do you think supports that decision? So AI tends to generalize, and human learners, our students, have to defend, they have to commit, and they have to reflect. The 6th strategy would be using multi-modal assessments. So text-only assessments are the easiest for AI to complete. Think of asking them to create visual models or diagrams. Even though AI is getting better at that, it's still behind. Concept maps. Ask them to create Gantt charts for specific elements of the assignment. Audio reflections is another one where you can hear their own voice. Again, that's something that AI will catch up, but I think for the next couple of years at least, we would be ahead on that area. Ask them to create a demonstration or a simulation. So the more modes of expression you assess in one single assessment, the less effective AI becomes in providing that single one solution. The 7th strategy would be to design iterative feedback and revision cycles. So AI is very good at the one-off submission. So if you think of learning as iterative, you can then create things like feedback loops and peer review sessions and resubmission opportunities. If you design it well, you don't have to worry about adding too much burden both to the students and yourselves in terms of assessing it. You could involve peer assessment here, for example. So what I'm trying to say is try to move away from performance to development so that you can see the development of the students. The 8th strategy would be to explicitly assess metacognition. So to ask students to reflect on their own learning. So asking them questions like, what challenged your thinking? How does your understanding changed? What was that key milestone that changed your decision or your thinking? or what was the key intervention that changed the way you look at things. What would you improve next time? What are your weaknesses and how would you improve them? So yes, AI can generate some reflections, but you'll start saying, in a class of 100, you start seeing the same generic reflections. You can actually recognize and start recognizing what is authentic metacognition and what is fake. The ninth strategy is to co-create assessment criteria with the students, so personalizing the assessment, if you like. So the students can help you develop the rubrics or the success criteria, and they gain ownership of the assessment. So you can have greater transparency and hopefully stronger engagement through that approach. And one would hope reduced motivation to cheat. Students are less likely to start looking for quick shortcuts when they feel responsible for what the assessment might be. And 10 and final, clearly define when and how AI may be used. I tend to say it's easier to go to the extremes. Either you say no AI whatsoever, or give them complete freedom in the AI, knowing that you've designed an assessment that minimizes AI, rather than start saying, well, you can use this platform, but you can't use this platform, because that confuses matters, and people are likely to want to find ways to extend your brief, let's say. So also train them on how they should acknowledge AI. Sometimes you might feel it's plagiarism when it's not. If we explain it correctly and well to our students, hopefully they will be citing AI appropriately. Just have explicit expectations, and if you're very, very clear, the students are more likely to engage responsibly and in an ethical way. At this point, really, our solution is not about detection, because that is becoming more and more difficult to do so or even prove, but it's all about design, so that we minimize the needs for detection. So we value critical thinking, we value creative writing, we value reflection, we value the authenticity of the student. Then AI should become a weak shortcut rather than a serious threat to the learning of our students. At the end of the day, what we expect assessment to do is to showcase that the students have passed or did really well with the assessment criteria, and the assessment criteria or the assessment itself is measuring how well they have met the aims and objectives. That's my thoughts for now. I hope it helps. I know it's a difficult trip out there. It's getting harder and harder, but perhaps in the future we'll make a video of how you can use AI as your friend and collaborator rather than your enemy that you feel you must constantly defend from. Look after yourselves, and good luck.